Let's give it about another minute or so as people log in. Thank you. I see another couple joining, but why don't I start, since we'll start with just the introductory stuff. Welcome everyone to the inaugural forum of the NASEO State Industrial Working Group. I'm Rodney Sobin. I'm a senior fellow at NASEO, and I'm joined by my colleague Sam Kramer at NASEO as well, who's working with me on this initiative. Before beginning today's program, I do want to, with great thanks, acknowledge the support and partnership of the Department of Energy's Industrial Efficiency and Decarbonization Office. We will be hearing from today from various offices at DOE, as well as throughout the year as we visit various programs in DOE as well as with other agencies. Today, we're very glad to have two of the DOE offices. We will have Amanda Mays, Manufacturing Assistance Program Manager for the Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chain, speak on the Advanced Energy Manufacturing Recycling Grants, as well as, I think, discussing a bit on some of the other programs from what's called the MESC office. We'll also be joined by Christina Walrand, Stakeholder Engagement Lead at the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, another new office at the Department of Energy. She also comes to us, or comes to DOE, with a background at the state level in economic development, which will be really helpful and useful for this and for our continuing collaboration. She will speak on the industrial demonstration programs that are supervised by her office. And we're very fortunate today to have focus on Connecticut. We'll have Paul Lavoie, the Chief Manufacturing Officer for the state of Connecticut, that I believe is a unique position in that state, as well as Lydia Rupert from the State Energy Office within the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. We'll have the two DOE speakers and then a Q&A portion, followed by... I'm hearing a little bit of background, so my next slide after I introduce mention Connecticut, we'll have Paul Lavoie of the state of Connecticut, as well as Lydia. Then we will have open discussion towards the end of today's session. We're scheduled for about an hour and a half, followed by wrap up. Next slide, please, Sam. So hearing a little bit of background, that reminds me to ask people to please mute when not speaking. This forum is meant to be interactive, so we will encourage discussion. Please use the raise hand to be recognized or use the chat function. Again, after the two DOE presentations, we'll have a period of 12 to 15 minutes or so for Q&A, and then following the Connecticut presentation, we'll also have a Q&A session, and then that will be followed by an open forum as mentioned. Next slide, please. So before beginning the main features today, since this is the inaugural forum for the working group, I do want to give a little bit more background as to our interests and purpose and objectives and what we are helping to work with you about. So the purpose of this is to help the state energy offices and others to identify, develop, and enhance resources to advance clean energy and clean manufacturing industries. We want to enhance cooperation and coordination across various technical and business assistance programs. These are not only the Department of Energy supported programs, but the NIST Manufacturing Extension Partnership, Energy Star, state small business development centers, and others. We want to help you to help support economic development and productivity, emissions and environmental objectives, as well as energy reliability and resilience. And the idea here is to strengthen existing industries as well as to advance new technologies in industries. So the working group is interested in so-called Main Street manufacturing of our everyday products, as well as advanced and high-tech manufacturing and manufacturing of energy-related technologies. Next slide, please. The working group is growing. This list is already out of date. I think Virginia will be joining us as well, along with the states that are listed. We are open not only to the state energy offices, although that's sort of our focus because we're NASEO, but we are open to membership by other state and public agencies that are affiliated with the state, such as Mr. Lavoie, who's the Chief Manufacturing Officer, Connecticut. We have some folks at universities in Utah, as well as others. So the purpose, again, is to support manufacturing business and technical assistance across the manufacturing sphere. Next, please. I think without much further, oh yeah, I did have one more slide. Sorry about that. So a bit more about the working group. No, go back one. Okay, there we go. Sorry, Sam. Sorry for the mixed messages. So the working group provides web resources, and we will be doing regular email updates on assistance programs, on funding and financial provisions of the IIJA and IRA, as well as other laws. We will seek to disseminate relevant reports and studies, make available or point to tools that are being made available. Our goal is to, well, our plan is to have approximately bi-monthly forums and exchanges. Some of the candidate topics are the industrial assessment centers supported by the Department of Energy, the new IRA tax credits, a couple of which are oriented towards manufacturing, some of the non-DOE programs that I'd mentioned, such as the Manufacturing Extension Partnership and EPA programs, other Department of Energy programs and opportunities, as well as initiatives by non-governmental and industry associations, such as Renewable Thermal Collaborative, which has developed a renewable thermal vision document and came out recently with an industrial electrification report and has some tools that are being developed as well. We'll also, if time allows and interest dictates, explore some other provisions, such as the Defense Production Act, the CHIPS and Science Act, which also have relevance to clean energy and clean manufacturing. And plus, we would like for each of the forums to have a state focus, as we will have in Connecticut. Another thing that we plan to do is a bit of a deeper dive with some states to understand experiences and lessons in advancing clean manufacturing in their states and coordinating technical assistance and business assistance services. As always, we will welcome your feedback and your suggestions. We certainly welcome states raising their hands to participate and speak up as we do the future forums and have the state focus features. And I think that's enough of me babbling for a while, so I will hand it over to Amanda to give her presentation. And Amanda, if you could then hand it over to Christina. And then after those, we'll have a bit of a Q&A session, and then we'll follow that with the Connecticut focus. So Amanda, take it away, and Sam, next slide, please. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Rod and Sam, for the opportunity to join you guys today. My name is Amanda Mays. I'm the Manufacturing Assistance Program Manager at DOE, responsible for overseeing this bipartisan infrastructure law 40209 program, the Advanced Energy Manufacturing and Recycling Grant Program, as well as the forthcoming State Manufacturing Leadership Program. I joined DOE in November from Empire State Development, so I'm very familiar with state government. I spent time there working in both regional and statewide economic development for New York State, so excited to see New York on this list. Prior to that, I worked here in DC at the Brookings Institution, so a little bit of a homecoming for me to come back here. I'm excited about this role and helping implement some of the new place-based investments that DOE is working on, and then work to reshore domestic manufacturing. So today I'm going to be overviewing the 40209 program from the funding opportunity announcement that was issued on February 13th. I'll also overview the community benefits plan component of the bipartisan infrastructure law and its inclusion in this program. And then if time allows, I'm going to get into some of the details on the State Manufacturing Leadership Program, and then just some overview information on the industrial assessment centers for my colleague Jeremy Avens here in MESC that I think hopefully you guys will get a chance to hear from not too long from now. Next slide, please. So first, an introduction to you on the Office of Manufacturing and Energy Supply Chains, or MESC, that is overseeing this program. MESC was formed at the beginning of the implementation of the bipartisan infrastructure law, so we're about a year old as an office, and we're part of the new Office of the Undersecretary for Infrastructure here at DOE. So our focus is primarily on building the competitiveness of the domestic manufacturing base in the US and reshoring many of the technologies that in recent years have been manufactured elsewhere. And specifically within the division of MESC where I sit, our focus is on small and medium-sized manufacturers. Next slide. So the Advanced Energy Manufacturing and Recycling Grant Program is, as I said, Section 40209 of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or bill. It's a $750 million program in total, and our FOA from last month announced an allocation of an initial $350 million open for applications. So eligible applicants are small and medium-sized manufacturers based on the criteria that was in the bill legislation, which is that's on the slide here. These firms, as you know, make up 99% of the domestic manufacturing base. So by investing in them, we're ensuring we're investing in US global competitiveness and the security of our supply chains. There is within this statute priority for minority-owned firms for awarding funding through this program, as well as a specific focus on energy communities, which we'll get into further. Next slide. So in this program, manufacturers must produce or recycle products to be used to support clean energy supply chains. The intent here is that we're investing in projects that contribute to a secure and resilient domestic clean energy supply chain. So when those products, as you know, are made in America, that contributes to our clean energy future, and we're less susceptible to disruptions and threats. So the types of property are listed here. There's more information in the FOA as well, and it spans projects that are in a variety of clean energy technologies. Next slide. So on the overview slide, I talked about the geographic requirement associated with this program. This is to ensure that funds are invested in communities that have historic ties to coal mining or power generation, which were vital to the economic growth of the US. So as we shift to clean energy, we're focusing on fostering targeted economic revitalization and investment using the existing assets of people and places and improving the lives of those dislocated workers. So these projects must take place either in a census tract where a coal mine closed after December 31st of 1999, a census tract where a coal-fired power plant was retired after December 31st of 2009, or a census tract adjacent to either of those two criteria. So on our program website, we have a link to the map that's shown here. This outlines where coal mines and coal power plants were located in the eligible tracts. The data is pulled right from EIA and MSHA for this map. So it could be used as a tool to help interested applicants locate whether or not census tracts are eligible. You can also overlay the Interagency Working Group on Energy Community Priority Communities on this map, which is shown here in purple, as well as disadvantaged communities. So that will help you think about some of those community benefits components. And then I just wanted to note, This map has not been updated since November of 2022. So we are starting to get folks that are identifying locations that they're not seeing on the map and questioning eligibility. Again, this map is just a tool to help guide eligibility, but is not sort of determining the eligibility. The eligibility are those criteria that I talked about before. So coal mine closed, coal power plant closed, or adjacent to those census tracts. So anything that's not on there doesn't mean that it's not eligible. We'll be updating this over the coming weeks and periodically on an ongoing basis. And then we'll also have a mechanism for people that if they don't see a census tract located here and want to submit that data, we'll give them instructions on how to do so. So that will be forthcoming as well. Next slide. So applications for this program must either before establishing or building a new facility or expanding or re-equipping an existing facility. So when we say building, we're talking basically about new construction project on vacant land. This could include construction of a new facility by an entity that already has existing facilities at other locations, but then wants to put a new plant in one of these target communities. For re-equipping, it could be repurposing a vacant or a shuttered facility to produce or recycle advanced energy property. It could be altering current manufacturing lines for the purpose of newly producing or recycling advanced energy property, or it could be physically expanding a manufacturing or recycling facility to accommodate new or additional production or recycling lines. It could be adding of production or recycling lines to increase the output of a current facility, or any other demonstrated change to an existing facility that increases capacity through new or additional equipment at the project site. Next slide. So DOE is requiring a community benefits plan to be submitted with all applications that will have to include all 4 of these pillars: the Justice 40 Initiative, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, good jobs, and worker and community agreements. This is to ensure that DOE's investment in a project will have broad shared prosperity within the host community. So first on J40, President Biden has made it a goal that 40% of the overall benefits of certain federal investments flow to disadvantaged communities. This is one of those programs. And disadvantaged communities is defined as those that are marginalized, underserved, or overburdened by pollution. For the community benefits plan here, applicants should describe their plans to address energy and environmental justice, how they will work to maximize benefits flowing to disadvantaged communities in ways that are relevant to the project. Through the DEIA principle, we're seeking to encourage the participation of underserved communities and underrepresented groups in the projects that we fund, so that we're ensuring that equitable access to business opportunities, good paying jobs, career track training, and other economic opportunities exist through our funding. So here, applicants, we're looking for them to demonstrate partnerships with community-based organizations, underrepresented businesses, educational institutions, workforce development organizations that serve workers who face barriers to accessing quality jobs. They might also talk about internal policies, such as comprehensive support services for workers, anti-bias training, equitable hiring and promotion practices, or the use of contracting and subcontracting within their own companies to achieve DEIA. In the pillar of investing in workers, DOE is looking for applicants to describe their plans for job creation and providing high quality jobs, inclusive recruitment and hiring, worker rights, workplace safety, and investments in worker training. So applicants might think about outlining how they plan to attract, train, and retain a skilled and qualified workforce for both construction and ongoing operations phases of their projects. Talk about a plan for assessing the local workforce and then the training and upskilling opportunities, industry recognized credentials, career track employment opportunities that are gained through this project, and then also relationships with community and labor organizations. And then finally, we're looking for applicants to discuss their engagement with local stakeholders, which could include local and regional economic development organizations, workforce development organizations and community colleges, labor unions, state, regional, and local governments, including tribal governments where appropriate, community-based organizations representing local residences and businesses, and how specific and labor engagement activities are informing their project development and then responding to community concerns. And then we're also looking for them in this section to discuss any worker and community agreements that might come out of the engagement process. Next slide. So our program website has a link to the funding opportunity announcement. I can put that in the chat while Christina is talking. We're also compiling a teaming partner list that we would ask you to consider sharing within your state entities and with your constituents. Teaming partners can be useful collaborations and partnerships for developing those community benefit plan components and also just ensuring overall project success. So anyone that you think, could be a part of a good application, they can go to this website, they can submit their information, and then therefore manufacturers who are looking to engage in these communities will have some available contacts that they should partner with. Next slide. So Rod, I don't know if you want me to pause here on questions. I do have a couple more slides on the other programs, and then do you want to handle it all at once?
I think go ahead
Okay.
and finish your slides, then we'll
Great.
hand it to Christina, and then we'll have the Q&A after both presentations.
Sounds good, thanks. You can go to the next slide then. So I just have two overall other MESC provisions that I'll just talk about briefly. Next slide. The first is a state manufacturing leadership program. We issued a notice of intent for this program on February 10th. The FOA is forthcoming this month. Next slide. So this program includes $50 million to be allocated to states in awards of up to $2 million each. The program seeks to accelerate the deployment of smart manufacturing technologies by small and medium-sized manufacturers, including high-performance computing capabilities. So states will have the opportunity to determine how to use the funds to create new or expand existing programs and resources that provide those types of technical services, technical assistance services to small and medium manufacturers. So they could bolster current state-run programs, they could invest in regional programs, they could create partnerships with local, state, and national resources. So it really will be up to the state to demonstrate to us the best use of these funds in their application. Next slide. So some ways to think about this might be providing workforce training, creating problem-solving assessments for small and medium-sized manufacturers, or allowing them to access those resources that already exist that do this, testing new technologies before making decisions to invest in them, using AI to model new lines, processes, or efficiencies. So we've included in this slide some example partner opportunities here that states might consider for their small and medium-sized manufacturers. And we are encouraging states to engage those small and medium-sized manufacturers in their states to identify their needs so that they could really tailor their program applications to address the gaps in those services. We expect to launch this FOA, as I said, in March. The notice of intent is out, and I can circulate that as well. And we are developing the same teaming partner list for this program. So this could be an opportunity for those entities that have resources to identify themselves as interested in the program. So then states will know to consider them in their program application development. Next slide. And then I just have two quick slides on the Industrial Assessment Centers program in MESC. This is run by my colleague, Jeremy Avens, who is also new to DOE. So I don't have a ton of background, just wanted to overview, what he shared with me to present. There are currently 37 IACs located at 37 universities around the country. These centers conduct the energy assessments for small and medium-sized manufacturers to identify opportunities to improve productivity, competitiveness, reduce waste, and save energy. Typically, through these assessments, they're identifying more than $130,000 in potential annual savings opportunities for manufacturers, nearly 50,000 of which is implemented during the first year following the assessment. So these could be really important to small and medium-sized manufacturers. Over 20,000 IAC assessments have been conducted. Next slide. So there are a couple IAC FOAs in progress and forthcoming. The Centers of Excellence funding opportunity announcement was issued last year. That is in the review and selection process. So that will establish 5 of the existing IACs as Centers of Excellence. There's a forthcoming FOA that will work on expanding workforce training under IACs. And then there is a focused FOA focused on helping small and medium-sized manufacturers implement those assessment activities conducted by the IACs. So hopefully you guys will have a chance to have Jeremy join soon, and you can ask him much more pointed questions than you can pose to me on these IACs, but they are an important component of our MESC vertical in terms of facilities and workforce. So I will pause there and then turn this over to Christina.
Oh, could I chime in here? Amanda,
Sure, go ahead, Cody.
So I'm actually the director of one of these IAC programs for the University of Utah and kind of representing the state of Utah. And we have actually applied to be one of these centers of excellence. So if people have questions about the program, it's a humongous part of my life. So feel free to ask questions. I will
Thank
say
you.
I'm actually in this capacity. I've sort of been volunteered by my state energy office because they're just spread a little thin, I would say. So we just have a tremendous partnership with them. So I would say that's, if you're representing a state energy office, you can build these partnerships with your universities or specifically with the IACs and just can cover a lot more ground this way. So we're very happy as an IAC to also represent the state of Utah when it comes to industrial energy usage.
Okay, thank you, Cody. Let's shift over to Christina if we can.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, you're up to bat.
Well, it's so nice to see you all. And I think that it's so fabulous that this group is together and that we have an opportunity to talk through some of the opportunities that are coming up across the department. I know that there's a lot going on right now, but I want to emphasize that the work that you all do, I think is just absolutely critical to the success of the programs that we're all collectively undertaking, and would just really welcome if you have additional questions, even if you're not sure if they perhaps should go to one of us, I'm happy to try and help field those, and just really want to make sure that folks understand, where opportunities lay. Of course, we have some restrictions, but generally, I think we can tend to help. So today, I want to talk a little bit about the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, another new office, which I know adds to the complexity of navigating the department, but also, frankly, offers a ton of opportunity, across MESC and OCED and others. And so again, that's sort of the bottom line around my offer to help. And I know that others in the department very much feel the same way. So I want to talk a little bit about this office and then talk about an upcoming funding opportunity announcement. We'll use the notice of intent to give us some publicly available information, and hope that you all can ask questions and may be able to find some ways that you might be interested in participating. And then some of the community benefits pieces are very similar to what Amanda described. Those are standardized things that we're working on across the department, so I won't belabor those, but just know that that's very important to our office as well. So next slide. This is just the disclaimer that our lawyers like to have us put in here, but it essentially says that we need to stick to publicly available information, which we will in the slides. The notice of intent is pretty substantive, but just know that if there are questions that we can't answer, it's because of our restrictions. We do want to be as helpful as we possibly can. Next slide. Okay, so our office's mission is really to be the sole office that's looking at demonstration projects at scale, so commercial scale demonstration projects. And we also recognize that it's incredibly important for us to partner with the private sector, which includes private entities, but also folks like you, state governments, et cetera. It's very, very important that we do that in order to facilitate success for these projects, because ultimately, our goal is not just to build the first 1, 2, 3, 4 of a kind. It's to build them in such a way that the market can pick up and build the next many of a kind. So really, as a core component of our mission, we are looking to accelerate the deployment, market adoption, and the equitable transition to a decarbonized energy system. So our scope is technology, multi-technology, technology neutral. We're a $25 billion office. And so we're looking at things like regional hydrogen hubs and carbon management, advanced nuclear demonstrations, which is part of my portfolio as well, long duration energy storage, energy improvements in rural and remote areas, and clean energy demonstrations on mine lands, which are our place-based pieces, as well as our industrial demonstrations program, which I will describe to you today. Next slide. So just really quickly on our mandate, I think it helps put into context who we are. We're really looking at these full-scale demonstration projects. Excuse me. We're looking at helping to achieve clean energy goals. and unlocking the follow-on investment that we know will be absolutely critical to scale up. Engagement and outreach is a really important component of the work that we do. So we want to understand your constraints, the opportunities that you're seeing, and do our very best to integrate them into our program. Next slide. So I think this tends to help place OCED in the historical context of the offices of the Department of Energy. So, you know, we have, and rather than looking at all the details on this slide, I think you can just kind of get a sense that there's a lot of weight to the left side of your screen. And that's because we have and continue to be really, you know, incredibly effective in advancing technologies from the earliest stages up through, you know, pilot scale demonstrations. And then we have a range of deployment opportunities historically, and are adding more, as you heard from Amanda today. And so our office really comes in to try to help bridge that. So, you know, we have recognized that once technologies are proven out at a pilot scale, there's still a gap where it's either perceived or actually too risky for the commercial, for the private sector to take them up at a commercial scale. And so that's where we come in, and we're really looking at addressing some of the market factors that are really important to their ultimate success. Next slide. So I think it's also helpful just at a high level to understand our project management approach, and a couple of things that I will highlight on this slide. One is that, you know, for each of our projects, we would expect them to proceed through a phased approach where we would evaluate them at regular intervals on a range of activities. So engineering, procurement, and construction, permitting and safety, technical data and analysis. I think those are things that you would expect to see. But we also are looking very much at business development and management. And a community benefits plan. So community benefits will be centered in each of these review processes. And so I think that that's really important. I just saw a question come into the chat about spent fuel storage facility. So that's run out of the Office of Nuclear Energy. We work really closely with them. They had recently released an RFI on consent-based siting. So looking for communities who are interested across the United States in potentially hosting this type of facility. So I can, once I'm done presenting, I'll drop a link to that in the chat here. But that's something that the department is currently working on right now. All right, next slide. So to get into the industrial demonstrations program, next slide. So we are currently working on up to $6.3 billion to deliver transformational technologies necessary to decarbonize energy intensive industries. And so this is really, you know, an effort that seeks to drive this competitive edge in low and net zero carbon manufacturing, and also to help build the market for green products. And so we're really looking for high impact and replicable solutions. Next slide. So the design for this program comes out of a lot of sources, but you know, one piece is the industrial decarbonization roadmap, which some of our colleagues in the department worked very closely on in IEDO, or the Industrial Efficiency and Decarbonization Office. And so that finds essentially that this is a really thorny challenge, right? You know, the industrial sector accounts for 1/3 of carbon emissions. It's incredibly energy intensive, as you all well know. And there are also a really diverse array of processes and operations, and there are emissions not just from the energy needs, but also from the feedstocks themselves. And so when you think about the decarbonization pathways, you're going to be looking at a suite of technologies across these 4 pillars. So energy efficiency, industrial electrification, which we know will create additional load for our grid as well. Low carbon fuels, feedstocks, and energy sources, and carbon capture and utilization and storage. And so you'll see here that some of our programs are really interconnected. So hydrogen hubs, I think, will meaningfully play a role in some of the work that we're doing, and we'll really want to take lessons from each of those programs and integrate them into the work that we're doing. Next slide. So we're asked by Congress to look at really these energy intensive industrial subsectors. So iron, steel, aluminum, cement and concrete, glass, pulp and paper, industrial ceramics, chemicals, and then others. And so we would also be interested in cross-cutting opportunities that could address multiple facilities. Next slide. So when you think about our program priorities, we're really going to be looking at three things. So one is decarbonization. So looking at direct facility and product level greenhouse gas emissions reductions, but then also this potential for uptake. So whether the industry could adopt the decarbonizing technology. We also are looking for uptake in terms of financial and market viability. So we have been focused by Congress on priority for partnerships with purchasers of the green products and replicability as well in terms of the technologies themselves. And then communities too. So we'd be looking at the benefit creation for the greatest number of people in nearby communities. And so that covers all of the pieces that we recognize as a department as a whole are really important to community benefits. But I would also mention that when it comes to industrial, reducing things like air quality impacts and improving public health are going to be really important. Next slide. So this is a high level of the anticipated program scope. So we're looking at two different provisions here, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, which is up to $500 million, and the Inflation Reduction Act, which has the bulk of the funds in $5.8 billion. And so, really, I think the thing to take away here is that we have an opportunity to do a lot of different types of things. We have the opportunity to do full new marquee facilities. We have an opportunity to work with existing facilities to overhaul them. And we have the chance to also meaningfully look at doing retrofits for facilities as well. I think one important component to mention is that projects funded under the Inflation Reduction Act will need to cross critical risk milestones by September 30th, 2026. So look to the funding opportunity for additional detail if you're interested in that. Projects don't need to be complete by then, but that's just a little bit of a quirk in the funding for these two different provisions. Next slide. So as we look at the timeline, I see things are a little bit condensed here, but I think the thing to know is that, we are going to be announcing this funding opportunity in the March timeframe, so coming very soon. And then, we'll be doing a concept paper phase where we're essentially evaluating a shorter version of the concept to give encourage or discourage notifications, and then full response drafting and review, and looking at late 2023 for selections. And so I would just say, as folks on this call think about opportunities, I would love if there are industrial facilities that you think could be interested. If there are utilities or others within your networks, please share this information with them, because we really want to get as many great proposals as possible in for this money, and really think it's a fantastic opportunity to really take advantage of once in a generation investment to transform the industrial sector. So next slide.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Christina and Amanda, thank you. And I actually just want to build up, Christina, that question with respect to outreach and education towards, the small to medium industrial manufacturers that all of us, all the states on this webinar, may come across. So with respect to that, this funding is great. It's an opportunity for us to provide information to them, but their time commitment to address energy is limited, and we have a very small window to provide information. So is OCED or MESC providing some sort of one page or some quick synopsis that we could provide or leave to entities for them to consider? Because most of them know there's a lot of money, but have no clue to what's available or potentially out there. And I know, OCED and MESC is probably looking to the state agencies and energy offices to disseminate this information out. So any sort of cheat sheets or anything that would be vital and very important for us to have in our hands. So thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate your comment, and just want to emphasize that we empathize with folks who are looking at these funding opportunities, and also to the extent that we can want to make sure that as many people know about the things that they could take advantage of, but also that they can quickly hone in on what is of greatest interest to them, because we know that there is a time challenge. So I will just say that we recognize the need for this, and it's something that we are working on within the department, not just for these new opportunities themselves, so maybe one pagers about each of them potentially, but also a way for so folks can decide which opportunities might work for them. So stay tuned. We'll make sure that we share that with NASEO and you all when it's ready.
Not counting the meetings, not counting the training.
Next slide.
I don't understand.
So I'm just going to go really quickly through some of the energy and environmental justice pieces, because I think Amanda covered a lot of it and it's very similar. So, just to emphasize that we really are centering communities in the work that we're doing. It's very important to this administration and to both of our offices. Next slide. So, this is a very similar slide. So we are going to be looking at community benefits plans for all of our applications. So we know that that's new for a lot of folks. We've been issuing community benefits plan guidance for each of our funding opportunities within OCED. Obviously, since this one's not out, we don't have the specific guidance out just yet, but it's something that we will be able to offer soon. And if it's of interest, we can share some of the prior ones that you can reasonably think would be a roadmap. But we do take very seriously the opportunity to benefit the livelihood of American communities with these funds. Next slide. Next slide. So just really quickly, I think that, to your point, I don't think this would necessarily, a small to medium-sized manufacturer would find this as orienting as I think something that we're hoping for, but just is a little bit of context in terms of where things fall. So this funding opportunity is right in this demonstration space, and you'll see here, and actually this slide should be updated. This is a little bit a while ago, so I apologize. Use Amanda's information as the most up to date. But basically, as we're looking at some of these deployment pieces, looking at some of these partnerships pieces, this is sort of how some of these things fit together. Next slide. And then I would just encourage anyone who's interested to go to our website, sign up for our newsletter. And then, if there's interest in the funding opportunities themselves, there's a link to our exchange site here as well. That's really the quickest way to get information about the programs that we have. And I think this is my last one.
Okay, thank you, Christina. And I'm glad we've already had a couple of questions and comments during this conversation. And I do invite others to either raise their hand or put their questions in the chat. We'll have a few minutes for Q&A on this portion before shifting over to Connecticut. I did want to ask, so beyond these sessions, you joining us today, and I know there have been some other webinars and outreach on these FOAs and notices of intent. How are your offices and DOE working with other agencies and states to best support the economic, energy, and environmental benefits of these programs to states and communities? And I know, I think, Christina, you've been working with the U.S. Department of Commerce, I believe, EDA.
Yeah, I will just say that I think that there's a recognition from our office that, this is a whole of government approach. So one example, we have worked with the EPA on a few different angles, but so they have a technical assistance effort coming up called the Tic Tacs, and I will find the link for that. But, essentially, this is one of the ways that our office has found to try and give some technical assistance to communities or applicants who maybe don't have the bandwidth to apply for a huge funding opportunity like this. We can't fund people specifically to apply to our stuff, but the EPA can. So we worked with them on that. But I think there's also just a recognition, You had the tax credits on the first slide. That's a really important cross-office activity that we work in the Department of Energy. That's true for the hydrogen tax credits, the industrial tax credit, you know, lots of different tax credits here. I think that also as we get into regulatory and permitting spaces, that's something that we're going to be looking at really closely as well. So I suppose I would just say that, you know, we are certainly working on that and recognizing that and know that it is a need as we deploy these funds. And also, frankly, would welcome feedback on things we could do better, folks we could work with better as we move forward, because we know it'll be really important. And frankly, coordination between federal and state and local governments, tribal governments is going to be incredibly important once we have projects out there as well, because we know that, you know, everyone's going to be really involved in their successful implementation. And I'm sure Amanda likely has answers too.
Yeah, I would just add EDA and commerce are an important collaboration that we're working with, especially on this place-based work, such as our program and many that are in OCED. We just did a few webinars for the 40209 program focused specifically around the IWG priority community groupings, which overlap very heavily with the map that I showed to you all, with the intent of trying to help to create those types of partnerships that will be important to implementing these projects. Our funding goes to manufacturers, but it's really a regional revitalization opportunity and an ecosystem build that needs to happen. So by sort of trying to facilitate, and that's why we're putting a lot of emphasis on the teaming partner list, is that by those organizations identifying themselves and helping the manufacturers become aware of the assets that exist between the people and the skills that they have and how they're, you know, they can be upskilled and retrained into these specific new clean energy technologies, you know, the facilities that might already exist that local economic development organizations know about, that they work with site selectors every day to identify, like connecting those assets, you know, sort of all of this building. So we're starting with EDA in terms of relying on them because they have those regional partner networks much more than DOE has at this phase. But we want to take it further, right? They've got some really great communities of practice programs, both in manufacturing and both for the energy communities. So how are we using these? You know, we've got the initial $350 million out now. It's a $750 million program. So then how are we using the time to really foster some more of that awareness and that those collaboration opportunities using other agencies to help us sort of for the next one? You know, Christina mentioned EPA. We've talked to EPA as well. Where are they doing their brownfields investment and where are those opportunities overlapping with energy communities? So there's so much money out there, as everyone has said, you know, DOT is investing in a lot of these same communities. So starting to like, there's so much emphasis on getting money out the door and so much opportunity. And then how are we using it to step back as federal agencies and work together to make sure that we're doing targeted investments in a coordinated way versus running in parallel. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to do, not only within DOE, but across agencies to do more of that better and to say, well, we can't do, as Christina said, we can't do this, but they can, and make that direct connection so that everyone is working together. So it is certainly a work in progress. It's just, there's so much money at once that it wasn't there before.
So let me follow up, Amanda, on the energy communities. Some states, of course, have many of those, others not as much. I think most, if not all states, have eligible census tracts, but do not have a high density of energy communities or have those priority communities. Do you have advice or discussion of value of the program for those states which may not have so many eligible communities or census tracts?
Yeah, I think they're just as important, right? Obviously, where there was more concentrated mine closures, and that was so much of what the economy was, it obviously was devastating, but it's just as devastating to, you know, a town that has a coal power plant and that closes, and that was the major closure. So we're looking at them all, you know, with the same lens. There's the same criteria that they all have to meet to apply. So I would just say, you know, if you don't think because you're not in Appalachia, you're not in Four Corners, you're not in one of these high density areas, please make sure that, you know, your manufacturers in your regions know that their applications are just as valuable to us and just as important, because we want to make sure that we're investing in these communities that were left behind because of the energy transition, and make them a part of the clean energy economy. So yeah.
Okay. And let me follow up. I mean, there's tons of money, but actually it's a very large country with a lot of opportunities. And the reality is you have to be very selective, and there will be very good proposals that will not get funded. So the question, I think, is also, what advice might you have for someone who does get discouraged or doesn't win an award? Are there ways of maybe making referrals or pointing to other sorts of programs, whether it's Department of Commerce, Economic Development Administration, or state green banks? What are some opportunities for maybe learning lessons from successful applicants? Just some thoughts and commentary on that.
Yeah, I would say, as you said, we are expecting, there to be a high level of competitiveness in these grants. We will have more than one FOA for ours. We will have a forthcoming technical assistance program. So if there are sort of those manufacturers that are thinking, we're not quite ready to put something in, but we want to, this was mentioned in the FOA launch. We have not launched the program yet, though, that there is that opportunity to sort of fine tune their applications and to be ready for future opportunities, whether it's 40209, 48C, other DOE programs that are forthcoming. So we will have that assistance provided. But I think just this opportunity and having people think about clean energy manufacturing and reshoring domestic manufacturing writ large is important, because there's that spillover effect. Just because you don't get a grant, these new opportunities in manufacturing popping up have that impact on the supply chain, and it just generates more activity and really just the competitive nature of business that leads to more technology innovation and improvement in domestic manufacturing. So I just think that that's important for the growth of our industry in the US and sort of what it means for us, to come.
Christina, anything to add?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say as well that it's, we recognize the challenges that can come with these competitive processes and appreciate the time that folks are putting into them. This is something that we're thinking about as well. How we might, and what we're with our general counsel, frankly, how we might direct folks to things through our funding process. But I think this will also go back to how we're really trying to capture some of the a flow chart or some way for folks to really hone in on what they're interested in and what would be the best fit for them. I would also say that our program is really interested in sharing lessons learned and information out, and are really actively thinking about how we can bring together projects and help folks have access to some of the things that have gone well and the things that haven't gone so well, to facilitate market uptake. So your point is well taken. Your point as a question is well taken, and just know it's something that we're thinking about. We'll keep you posted on.
Great. So please keep us in mind as we learn lessons and experiences from these efforts. And I guess that leads to next question of course, we've had this sort of focus on discrete funding opportunities, but of course, that's really the start of those projects, not the end. And I hope that you will continue to engage with the state energy offices as well as with other state entities to continue engagement and to learn those lessons and disseminate and get those economies of scale and knowledge and so forth. And maybe some comments on continued engagement with our state energy offices and their sister agencies.
Yeah, I would just briefly say MESC is a brand new office. So we are building our stakeholder in contact list. So, anyone that's interested in keeping in touch, please, send me a note in the chat, follow up with me with an email. If it's not a program that I oversee, but it's within MESC, happy to make those connections. But we're sort of in intake mode. So any and every
Okay.
opportunity that we have to start to make those ties, we're looking for them.
Yeah, likewise, new office on our side as well, and really want to understand how folks are interested in integrating with us and working with us in the future. And absolutely, please always feel free to reach out. We welcome that very much, and we'll certainly keep you posted and make sure that we're answering some of the questions that you have, because, you know, as I mentioned, market uptake, this is scale is very much at the heart of the work that all of us are doing here. And we know that that'll be our projects, but also all the people who might want to be fast followers as well.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Let's now move over to our Connecticut presentation. Paul and Lydia, please take it away.
Well, thank you, Rodney, and thanks so much for having Connecticut here. I am joined today. I am Paul Lavoie. I'm Connecticut's Chief Manufacturing Officer. I work for Governor Ned Lamont. To my best recollection, I am the only Chief Manufacturing Officer in the United States that reports directly to a governor. And my job is to simply support and grow the manufacturing sector here in our state. And additionally, I'm also the state lead for our offshore wind initiative. So we have a heavy lift pier going in one of our deep water ports that is unobstructed. And we are setting that up as the hub for the offshore wind industry that'll go off on the East Coast as well. So kind of those dual responsibilities. I am joined by Lydia Rupert, who is a research analyst at the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. And she is an economist that works in the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and works very closely with me on certain energy projects that might surround our manufacturing sector. So what I'd like to do today is just talk to you a little bit about Connecticut, a little bit about our manufacturing sector, a little bit about how we support manufacturing, and then I'll turn it over to Lydia to talk about some of the things that we're doing as it relates to our energy strategy here in the state, and how, you know, our energy strategy and our manufacturing strategy overlap each other. So just a little bit on Connecticut. We are the 48th smallest state by land. We are 5,541 square miles. We are the 29th most populous state with 3.6 million people in our state. So next slide, please. Some things to share with you about Connecticut manufacturing. We are #1 in the USA in airplane engine and parts manufacturing. We are the home of Pratt & Whitney, and we manufacture the F-135 engine for the F-35 warfighter. We also make submarines at Electric Boat down in the southeastern part of our state. So we make 3 submarines a year for the US Navy. 50% of the new US Navy shipbuilding budget is for submarines. And we are also the home to Sikorsky aircraft, where we make the Black Hawk helicopter, the President's helicopter, and many other helicopters as well. You're gonna have to, these slides will load as you, there you go. We are #3 in the country in defense spending on a per capita basis. That is, Virginia's #1, Hawaii is #2, Connecticut is #3. What's interesting about Connecticut is we only have one very small military base, and that is the Groton Subbase in Groton, Connecticut. So the bulk of the billions of dollars that flow from the Department of Defense into the state of Connecticut are all around manufacturing. And I talked about some of the things that we make here in the state. Next slide. We're #3 in the US for the most concentrated manufacturing area. We have 4,368 manufacturers within our 5,441 square miles. So a very densely populated manufacturing ecosystem. Continue. We're #4 in US for productivity employees, and you can hit it again. And we're #4 for the most innovative economy. Connecticut is not a low-cost state. Connecticut is a high-cost state. We have a $15 an hour minimum wage. We have high energy costs. We have high healthcare costs. In the manufacturing sector, that drives productivity and it drives innovation. Connecticut cannot throw cheap labor at a problem. Whenever there's something that happens in the manufacturing sector where we're getting either price increases, or we're getting competitive cost increases or competitive pricing, getting squeezed in the middle, we have to focus on innovation and we have to focus on productivity improvement. So we are a state whose DNA is driven in innovation, is driven in productivity, is driven in taking a look at how we can do things better and how we can do things faster. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how we support those efforts through our strategic plan and our manufacturing efforts. Next slide. We have a long history of innovation. You know, we've got multi-generations of precision manufacturing companies, global leaders. You know, our supply chain alone, just for our defense supply chain, is well over 700 manufacturers. And a lot of our companies, we have 4th generation, 5th generation manufacturing companies. And we've invented some pretty cool things. Connecticut invented the helicopter. We invented the Polaroid camera. We invented the typewriter. And, you know, we like to have a little bit of fun because we invented the Frisbee, and we also invented the hamburger. So if you ever come to Connecticut, come to New Haven, we'll take you to Louis' Lunch, where you can find out exactly where the hamburger was invented here in the US. Next slide. So the employment sector in Connecticut, and you can keep hitting enter until the slide loads. We have 4,000, we said over 4,300 manufacturers. We have 161,000 people working in manufacturing. We're 100% recovered from the pre-pandemic manufacturing numbers. So we've recovered all of our manufacturing employment since the pandemic. But when you consider that 40% of those employees work for the top 25 companies, that means we have about 100,000 employees that are working in about 4,325 companies. And that puts our average size of the manufacturer here in the state at about 25 employees or less. So we have this very small manufacturing ecosystem here in Connecticut. It's generally been around for decades and decades. Next slide. You know, if you're involved in manufacturing, you know the impact, the economic impact that manufacturing jobs have on your economy. In Connecticut, every new job that we create in manufacturing creates another 3.4 jobs in the economy. And then every dollar that we spend in manufacturing generates another 2.79 of economic activity. And that really is a large, you know, a large driver by having the legislature and the governor certainly create the chief manufacturing office position, but we've also created an office of manufacturing. We're starting to grow what we're doing in the manufacturing sector and really looking at that as a way for us to generate great economic growth here in Connecticut. Our fiscal house is in order for the first time in generations. We have gotten 4 years of consecutive surpluses here at the state of Connecticut, and we continually invest in manufacturing. We're 10% of the employment in the state, but we're 13% of the state's GDP. So we are a driver of economic growth here in the state. Next slide. So the way that we approach it, so there's really some key things that we have. So we talked about the chief manufacturing officer and that position. So my job is really to drive collaboration across the manufacturing ecosystem. So I work with the Department of Labor. I'm housed in the Department of Economic and Community Development for administrative purposes. So I work very closely with DECD. I work very closely with our partners at the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. We have a chief workforce officer and an office of workforce strategy. I work very closely with them. And then we have technology hubs. We have our MEP, which is CONSTEP. We have a economic development organization called Advanced Connecticut that I bring all of these folks together on a regular basis so that we are collaborating, we are connecting, and we are communicating about what's happening in the manufacturing sector. I will bring my team of 5, I call it Team Connecticut, into one of our large manufacturers to help understand what their needs are, but to be able to do a briefing. And we're covering workforce, supply chain, innovation, industry growth, all led by the chief manufacturing officer. So we'll go into a large manufacturer and say, here's your Team Connecticut that's going to help you. A, we want to help understand what your challenges are, but B, we're going to also work in your supply chain to help strengthen your supply chain and make sure that we have a very healthy manufacturing ecosystem. We just released a preliminary of our manufacturing strategic plan. It will be ready on March 10th. So it's gone to the legislature and the governor and other key folks for them to take an opportunity to review that. And I'll review that on the next slide, a little bit about that. We have a manufacturing innovation fund here in the state of Connecticut. It was created in 2015. Since 2015, we've invested $100 million in manufacturing businesses. And these are manufacturers that are 300 employees or less. And then one of our signature programs is 100 employees or less. And I'll talk to you a little bit about what those programs are and the monies that are available to manufacturers here in the state of Connecticut for them to make their businesses more resilient, to help them grow their businesses, and to help make sure that they have a well-trained workforce to meet the needs of their business and to meet the demands of their customers. And then we're working on clean energy strategies. So the governor through Executive Order 21-3, has created a Clean Economy Council, which is a collaboration between the Department of Economic and Community Development and the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, co-chairing this Clean Economy Council to be able to drive Connecticut from where we are today to a carbon neutral, clean economy environment by the year 2040. We're doing that through investments in offshore wind. We have the hub with State Pier as it relates to offshore wind. So we're standing up the offshore wind supply chain, workforce, and academia and research working groups to make sure that we can capitalize on the renewable energy that will come from offshore wind. We're looking at hydropower and some relationships with other countries, from Canada, for example, on how we can have hydropower. You know, the cost of electricity, the cost of energy in Connecticut is one of the highest in the nation, if not the highest. And that's, you know, when manufacturers are a large consumer of energy, it becomes one of those large cost drivers that we're looking at all the ways that we can to reduce the cost of energy consumption here within the manufacturing ecosystem. I'll let the legislature and the governor talk about energy pricing and let them work on legislation around that. My job as the chief manufacturing officer is how do I look at ways to drive down energy consumption within the manufacturing sector? You know, we still have a nuclear power plant, and we look at how we can continue to use nuclear energy to help meet our energy needs and renewable energy. And then we're starting to take a look, and Lydia is really involved with our hydrogen hubs and sustainable aviation fuel. You know, we make jet engines here in the state of Connecticut. If we're going to move to sustainable aviation fuel, we want that research done here in Connecticut as we change the design of engines to take on an additional fuel source by using hydrogen as a sustainable aviation fuel. Next slide. This will just give you an idea of how we invest in manufacturers. So for manufacturing technology, you can get a voucher, you can get a grant program up to $100,000 for new equipment or business development that'll improve your productivity or competitiveness. You can get up to $20,000 for industry, Internet of Things and Industry 4.0 solutions for your manufacturing floor. And then you get a grant of $10,000 to do a Smart Industry Ready Index or a cybersecurity assessment. And again, these are available. The first two are 300 manufacturers or less, employees or less. The last one, manufacturing voucher program, is only 100 employees or less. Next slide. And then for workforce development, our Manufacturing Innovation Fund funds an apprentice program. We fund incumbent worker training. So a manufacturer with 300 employees or less can get up to $50,000 a year of training dollars to upskill their workers. This is a 50 cent on the dollar match, so it's a 50% match, and they can get up to $100,000 lifetime. We fund apprentices and we give wage subsidies for our apprenticeship program. And then we have an engineering internship program where we'll fund up to 2 interns for any Connecticut manufacturer that would like to have a summer intern. And we call this, if you learn in Connecticut, I want you to earn in Connecticut. And for us, it's trying to keep kids who go to college in Connecticut or keep kids who live here and go to college outside of the state of Connecticut to keep them working here in our manufacturing sector. So we're looking at ways that we can continue to grow our workforce here in the state. Next slide. So this is a little bit on the manufacturing strategic plan. So the strategic plan is built around 3 pillars: workforce growth and development. Now we do that intentionally in talking about workforce growth and development. We in Connecticut, we feel we have one of the most robust workforce development programs in the country. In fact, Kevin Graney, who is the president of Electric Boat, called the workforce development system in Connecticut a national treasure. And that, you know, Electric Boat needs 5,000 people a year for the next 10 years. And we've partnered with Electric Boat, with our workforce development systems, to make sure that we're going to meet the workforce needs across our entire manufacturing ecosystem. So as it comes to workforce development, we're certainly focused on how we can get people from where they are today into high-paying, career-changing manufacturing jobs. But the problem we have in Connecticut is that there's just not enough people here. So we're focusing right now in our legislative session around workforce growth. How do we have more the availability and affordability of housing here in the state? How we can get people from the cities to our manufacturers who have moved to the suburbs, so transportation. We're looking at subsidizing childcare and childcare costs so that we can raise our labor participation rate and get people who have left the workforce back into the workforce. So we're really looking at how do we build this robust workforce and how do we attract workers? Supply chain resiliency is how are we working about driving down costs? We're investing in smart manufacturing software that will allow manufacturers to optimize utilization of their machines on their shop floor to reduce energy consumption. We're implementing a model-based definition project in conjunction with the federal government, the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation. We call it the Digital Transformation Project, and to introduce model-based definition in the Connecticut ecosystem to be able to have the digital transformation and to take the relationship between our OEMs and our manufacturers and make that all digital, to be able to streamline that processes. We have just launched a database called Connex. It's in some of your states as well, but that program is going to allow our manufacturers to shorten their supply chains, reduce transportation costs, and then be able to continue to build the Connecticut ecosystem. So we've got initiatives, strategic initiatives and tactics around driving down costs. And then we have an industry growth strategy where we're looking at how are we going to grow the industry, the manufacturing industry, what sectors make sense for Connecticut, and how are we going to work to grow those. And renewable energy is one of the sectors that we're really focused on, and we know that there's a great opportunity here in Connecticut. And those three pillars are all supported by this culture of innovation. We look at, when it comes to workforce growth and development, we're looking at robots and cobots and automation around workforce growth and development. We know we don't have enough people to work in our manufacturing ecosystem. So how can we replace some of those mundane jobs that we can't find people to do with robots and cobots? We have a manufacturer that at each one of their work cells has a cobot, and that cobot makes a box. So that cobot is actually taking a piece of cardboard, putting it in a form, taping it, taking the box and putting it onto the work line, because they can't find people to make boxes. So we look at best practices across the state, and then through our Connecticut Center for Advanced Technology, we fund programs that are going to allow manufacturers to accelerate the adoption of Industry 4.0 technologies. Again, go back to the point that we have to drive innovation, we have to drive productivity. We don't have lots of what I would call low-cost options to be able to throw at issues that we have in manufacturing. Again, around supply chain, we're innovating, and then around industry growth. So we look at innovation first as a way that we're going to work to be able to solve some of the things that we have going on in the manufacturing sector. So just to kind of wrap all of this up, in Connecticut, manufacturing is one of the most important sectors that we have in the state. It's one of those that drives the economy. We have an integrated and comprehensive plan that works on growing the manufacturing sector. And we've done a really good job at taking all of the folks that are working in manufacturing, taking them into a large collaboration and getting everybody, the overall objective is to get everybody on the same boat and get them rowing in the same direction. Well, we're doing a really good job right now. At this point, we're pretty much have everybody in the same boat. We're working on getting the oars going in the right way. As I'm sure a lot of you folks experience on a regular basis. But we're not where we used to be. We're not where we used to be. We're not where we want to be. But thank God we're making progress. So that's just a little bit about the manufacturing ecosystem. I'm now going to turn it over to Lydia, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing in the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, some of the programs that we're looking at, and how we work together in concert as we go to those programs. So next slide, and over to you, Lydia.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, everybody. Great to be here. So I'm not going to talk about each program or each opportunity that we are envision and we are trying to get to Connecticut, because there are just many of them. But I am bringing a comprehensive understanding of how we are approaching and what all these opportunities, and what is our strategy to get this, especially because all of them overlaps a lot with the goals of the manufacturing office, and how we can work together to accomplish all of our goals. So, well, it is very clear that the manufacturing office is the house for manufacturing in Connecticut. It is the primary responsible for supporting Connecticut's manufacturing ecosystem. However, by definition, an ecosystem embraces several dimensions, elements, components, stakeholders, including all the state agencies that we have. And this is where Connecticut DEEP, the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, comes in. The agency has its primary role of improving and protecting the state's natural resources and environment, as well, the second arm, as well as providing cheaper, cleaner, more equitable, more reliable energy for Connecticut residents and businesses. But the agency is also very much committed to incentivizing Connecticut's economy and creating good jobs. We try to support as much as we can the expansion of Connecticut's manufacturing, and of course, industrial decarbonization that is also attached to this idea. It's very much connected with advancing the manufacturing sector. So with that in mind, DEEP is approaching all the funding and tax credits that are provided by the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and the Inflation Reduction Act as great opportunities to do exactly that, to collaborate with the manufacturing office and with the manufacturing advancement in Connecticut. Not only by providing the energy, so we are looking at those opportunities not only to provide the energy and environmental results that we are charged with, the agencies charged with, but also to collaborate to advance the manufacturing sector. And this is possible because, well, number one, some of the funding opportunities directly create or stimulate the manufacturing activities, and number two, because many of those opportunities indirectly stimulate the manufacturing activities through economic spillover, so backward and forward linkages, employment multipliers, and so on. Therefore, DEEP is very much focused on securing as much federal funding as possible to achieve all the goals that we have: the clean, affordable, sustainable, equitable, and resilient energy, good paying the job creation, and clean energy industrial expansion. Next slide, please. Thanks. Well, so how we are going to do all that? And the strategy is, well, one, prioritizing the main components of residents' energy wallets when we are analyzing the pool of funding opportunities that we should or could pursue as a state. And these main components are the electricity, heating, and transportation. So this is a big determinant for our so we can choose between the many opportunities that are out there. We also prioritize Connecticut's largest greenhouse gas emitting sectors when we are analyzing all the funding opportunities. And we try to do, we try our best to leverage existing programs whenever possible. So whenever we can attach the programs that we already have to those funding opportunities, we do that because we already have systems in place that are working and can be boosted by those funding opportunities. I believe also that one of the most special characteristics of our way of working in Connecticut, and Paul already mentioned that, and that certainly contributes a lot to achieving the positive results that we seek and that we are already getting here, is the highly collaborative work between the state agencies, not only between the state agencies, but I'm going to talk about this a little bit more now and the others later. So we are in constant work, in constant contact with other agencies to learn their goals, their priorities, their strategies, what they are working on in this moment. And this helps a lot to exchange data, information that can contribute to our work, but also disseminate information that is relevant to the work of other agencies, which they might not have known otherwise. So this collaborative work also amplifies on our network here at DEEP and allow us to better connect with a broader set of Connecticut stakeholders, such as the private sector entities and the associations, academic organizations, environmental justice community, environmental advocates, workforce development organizations, economic development organizations, just to name a few. And this is important because a strong stakeholder engagement it's a central component of our strategy of making the most out of the federal funding opportunities that are out there. And our strategy also relies on one, directly applying to federal funding opportunities. And in that case, it is crucial to be able to identify potential partners for the application. So it's really helpful to having this network growing. And two, our strategy also relies on disseminating funding opportunity information as much as possible to stakeholders that could apply for those funding opportunities. So again, having this stakeholder network engagement is extremely important to make sure that information is getting where it should. So we are in constant contact and talk to each other. And I send a lot of them to Paul. He also does the same, and not only with him, but with many other agencies. So this is definitely something that we see that it's being working. And lastly, a complementary strategy, but not less important, it's also to provide support to entities that wish to apply for the federal opportunities. And the type of support varies from Connecticut, connecting entities with other state agencies. In general, it is with the Department of Economic and Community Development and the Manufacturing Office, but we also connect them with other state agencies, the Department of Transportation, the Labor, and many others. Also connecting them with venture capital entities for matching funds. We also sometimes a lot of times, we play matchmaker to get partners for some projects. And we also provide letters of support to projects that we consider that are beneficial to Connecticut. So these are mainly the main strategies and ways of and a working environment that we are building here in Connecticut to leverage all this federal funding opportunities that are coming, that are very much welcome, and how we see that our work at DEEP overlaps and can contribute with the manufacturing development here in Connecticut. So that's it, and we are open for questions.
Thank you so much, Lydia, and thank you, Paul. That's fantastic to hear. A couple of questions. First, a relatively narrow one, and then a broader one. The narrower one is, in Connecticut, you do have a green bank, and I guess the question is, how are you all? Certainly, Lydia's department is working with the green bank, but how are you all bringing the green bank in? Have they been involved in manufacturing and industrial-related projects and financing? That's sort of the narrower question. The more generic question is, what lessons and pointers do you have for other states? Are there still challenges of working across programs and institutions and departments, and what are you encountering there, and how might you be getting over? Sometimes, as we all know, there are silos, and people are worried about their day jobs and view their functions maybe a little more narrowly than we might.
So for the first one, Rodney, I'll take the green bank. We have a energy reduction program that we fund through our manufacturing innovation program, manufacturing innovation fund, that involves the green bank. So we are very closely working with the green bank to provide them with funding for them to go out and do some energy reduction projects and reducing energy consumption projects within the manufacturing ecosystem. So they're a very important part of the offerings that we have for manufacturers. And then we work very closely with them to, our Office of Manufacturing is a concierge service for manufacturers. So when manufacturers come to us and they're asking us questions and bringing to them their challenges, we have all of these resources at our disposal to be able to connect them. So I'm very much a connector, and the person, you can't spell Connecticut without connect. So, So I'm, very much in the role of making sure that we're listening to manufacturers and then we're helping them. We have an industrial assessment center here at the University of Connecticut as well. So we work really hard to connect industry with those resources that we have. So it really is, we spend a lot of time on industry engagement with kind of the manufacturing ecosystem, because most manufacturers just don't know that they have all of these supports out there, and they just really don't know all the resources that are there. And so we do briefings with our very large manufacturers, and then we do events all across the state on a regular basis just to talk about the opportunities that we have. The lessons learned, people, we have a podcast that's done here, and it's called Made in America with Ari Santiago, and Ari does the podcast. And after my first year, he asked me what my biggest challenges were. And I said, number one is workforce. I think everybody in USA would agree that's number one. I said, but number two is communication. And he was set back a little bit by that. And he was a little surprised. And as I explained to him, I said, it takes, most of my effort is around getting everybody to collaborate, getting everybody to trust each other, getting the people in the manufacturing ecosystem to basically, we used to do this joke, people follow the money. And I said, well, I don't want them to follow the money. I want them to follow the mission, because if they follow the mission, the money will follow. The money will be there. And so, my job is to clarify that mission and then make sure we're rallying the troops around that. So I have monthly breakfasts with each key stakeholder where I just really want to know what they're working on. I convene groups of people together just so that we can talk about it. And the manufacturing strategic plan is going to allow us to coalesce around that mission, around what we're doing. But my biggest lesson learned is just know that it's every single day you have to think about collaboration, coordination, and communication, and just how are you going to, as a leader in your state as it relates to energy, how do you continue just to bring folks together, get them in the room, get them to trust each other, and get them to all work together. As I was saying, we want everybody in the same boat rowing in the same direction. We're pretty close to getting them in the same boat. We just need to get those oars moving in the right direction as well. And so that's really the biggest challenge and the biggest lesson learned. And we find that once people understand what it is that we're trying to accomplish, everybody moves closer to each other, because everybody's all, now it's all for the greater good as well. And and we're blessed with a very optimistic governor, and a governor who does tremendous amount of communication about what his vision is and how all of us can help follow that vision as well. So.
Great. So we're getting close to the end of the allotted time, but I would like to open it up if anyone else has either questions for any of the speakers, and also anyone who may want to chime in their own comments. So please use the raise hand function if you wish. And if everyone is shy, I actually do have a couple more questions. Does anyone want to chime in from the working group? Or you can save up your questions for the next forum in approximately bi-monthly. But I will ask, not seeing any hands raised, I will ask, how do you allot attention between helping existing firms and industries and sort of new industries, not just location and attraction, but sort of there's a distinction, sometimes a bit artificial, between advanced manufacturing and mainstream, so there's, the jet engines and the nuclear submarines, but there are also the welding shops and the dairies and I notice you make Pez mints you didn't mention that. That's a key industry there, along with electric boats. So
yeah, and non-alcoholic beer and pizza, and we have the world's largest truffle factory is here.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we make popcorn at Lesser Evil, but no, it's when we're talking about I lost the question.
Well,
talking about
how you balance existing industry and new industry, and also sort of the high-tech sexy stuff versus the basic, I make wood pallets for a living.
Yeah. So we actually don't use the word advanced manufacturing in Connecticut. What we do is we say it's Connecticut manufacturing, and some folks have more advanced technologies. And the reason why we don't is that we just did an advertising program. We were talking about advanced manufacturing and realized that we were insulting about 75% of our manufacturers. because they're like, well, I'm not advanced manufacturing. What am I? The dumb kid, and so.
Let me
So-
interject. DOE,
Yeah.
are you listening? Okay, go ahead, Paul.
So we call it Connecticut manufacturing. It's Connecticut manufacturing with, some have more advanced technologies. And in doing that, it's with this stated that, we want everybody to have new technology. We want to accelerate industry 4.0. But, again, using that language makes it much more inclusive for our entire manufacturing ecosystem. And it gets everybody to understand that we're here to support everybody and we're here to support them in different ways. So we do that. And then on the other side, we have an organization called Advanced Connecticut, and Advanced Connecticut is separated into business attraction and business retention and expansion. And so I have a resource at Advanced Connecticut that works on business attraction for the advanced manufacturing sector. They call it advanced manufacturing. And then I have resources that work on business retention and expansion. So I'm working with the advanced manufacturing attraction folks on new businesses that are looking to come to the state and what we're interested in attracting, while I'm also working with our existing manufacturing base on how we can help them retain them, but how we can also help them expand. So we have that organization that has those two separate functions. That, in fact, I had lunch today with the EVP of Business Retention and the President of Business Attraction at Advanced CT. We talk on a regular basis about the manufacturing ecosystem and how we're going to continue to support it.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I see Cody has his hand raised. Please go ahead. And you're muted.
Thank you. So I grew up in a rural coal community, and now I work at an urban university. And so I find myself spanning these two worlds, and I'm on sabbatical now, actually trying to really help a coal community. I've been trying to round up companies to take advantage of that BIL 40209 program. And what I've discovered in the last better part of a year is that the coal communities, in these rural communities, they desperately need the help, and they have little, at least the ones I'm working with, have little to no knowledge or resources for how to put together strong grant applications, which it's really challenging, even when you have a great infrastructure like a university. So is there any state out there that has a good model for making these connections between like state energy offices or universities and these rural struggling communities? Because I am struggling with making these connections. I'm just seeing they're just two different worlds completely. And any thoughts there from anybody that has found success here?
If I may chime in, Paul, on that, because I am very much involved with one particular federal funding application. I don't think there is a model, honestly, especially because each state, and not only the state, but each location has its own specificities and its own communities to be engaged. So whatever you see there in your community, this community that's related with coal, might be very much different from related to some other community that it's facing problems related to water. And so and we have been working on a regional level for this application. So we are seeing, we are exposed to a lot of different experiences. So I don't think there's a model, but it does really, really help those working groups where we can share the experiences and also the failures. We can learn a lot from failures. So I think this would be maybe the secret, like engaging with others a lot in other states as well, to really learn from others' experiences. And yes, increasing a lot the engagement with the community. This is number one to start an application that might be successful.
Thank you.
Of course. And Paul, if you have anything to add, please.
Yeah, I would like to hear. I mean, there are other states that would have more kind of impact with rural communities. We're fairly densely populated, so one of the most densely populated states. So it's not, it'd be interesting if any other states can chime in to help Cody.
Might be a good talking point for a future discussion.
Yeah.
There you go, Rod. You already have another one there. Line up.
I could actually, sometime in the future, I'd be happy to tell you about my experiences because they have been really interesting. And
I would love to hear.
And Cody, I think that could be a valuable thing for us to download, with DOE and then share with our federal partners too. Like as we're thinking about, as Christina said before, not only how do people sort of make sense of all the DOE opportunities, but all the opportunities across the federal government. I think to get those, what are the specific questions and problems and issues? And so then we could use that feedback loop, as a federal government to try to come up with ways. So, as DOE can't do it, there's somebody else that can, or just, to know what we're solving for.
So Cody is part of the issue, just unfamiliarity. I mean, it's also lack of capacity. We've heard of places where, the mayor is part-time and you have to call in between, these hours on even dated Thursdays or, something like that, which makes it difficult for some smaller communities, but is part of the issue of how to fill in SF form, something or other, and doing a budget for a DOE application. Is it?
that's part of the issue. Yeah, I think it's a lack of information and then kind of lack of manpower and skill set, to be honest with you. And then the thing that I've dedicated my sabbatical to like trying to help a place like this. And I just find there's just it's just two different worlds. They just live by different rules. And there's kind of a degree of distrust on both sides. And it's just there's some kind of social issues there as much as anything. So I'm still wrapping my head around it, but it's been really challenging, but interesting.
Okay. We are quite a bit over time, but I do want to see if anyone else, and thank you for those who have stuck it out overtime. If anyone else has a comment or two. Okay, with that, thank you very much to our guests. Greatly appreciate it, and thank you to our participants. We'll be looking forward to another forum in about 2 months, more or less. Perhaps on the industrial assessment centers, perhaps on the IRA tax credits that are manufacturing related, to be determined, and stay tuned. And we are always welcoming of your suggestions and comments and questions. Thank you all so much. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.